Hello everyone and welcome to today's video. Today we're talking about the state of Oregon, a state which in politics usually doesn't get talked about all that much as it is usually a very reliable Democratic state, but there is some important election news for 2026 where Democratic incumbent Jeff Merkley officially announced his re-election in a 2026 campaign statement and video. And I think this is important because we're starting to see for 2026 a lot of both Democratic and Republican incumbent senators have retired and not announced that they're running again, like Gary Peters in Michigan, Jeanne Shaheen in New Hampshire, Tom Tillis in North Carolina, and there are even some rumblings that Joni Ernst in Iowa could be retiring as well. So a lot of senators are kind of on retirement watch for 2026. However, Jeff Merkley announced in a recent video that he will be seeking re-election to a fourth term in 2026. Merkley was first elected to the Senate in November 2008, officially took office in January 3rd, 2009, and as of July 2025, he has served as Oregon's junior senator for around 16 and a half years. In a statement he put out saying, "For years I've worked to lift up the voices of ordinary Americans and take on powerful interests that rig our system. Now with Donald Trump and his MAGA cronies working overtime to destroy the checks and balances for our We the People government and shred programs families rely on, we're in the fight for our lives, and I'm not backing down." Merkley, who has been a vocal supporter for climate change or for fighting climate change, he introduced legislation to transition the U.S. to 100% renewable energy and has consistently opposed fossil fuel projects. As a former director of Portland's Habitat for Humanity, Merkley has advocated for affordable housing, tenant protections, and banking reform. He played a key role in crafting parts of the Dodd-Frank Act to prevent predatory lending. Merkley was an early critic of the Trump administration's family separation policy at the border. He has also pushed for expanded voting rights, ending the filibuster, and strengthening democratic institutions. And again, Oregon's a state that doesn't really get mentioned all too often, and that's due to the fact that it's usually a pretty reliable Democratic state. And even on the Wikipedia page, it even mentions Oregon's considered a strongly blue state at the federal level. It has not elected a Republican to the U.S. Senate since 2002, or any Republican statewide office since 2016. Democrats currently control both U.S. Senate seats, all statewide offices, and all but one seat in Oregon's U.S. House congressional delegation. Since January 2025, hold supermajorities in both houses of Oregon Legislative Assembly. Merkley was first elected in 2008, defeating then-incumbent Republican Senator Gordon Smith, and was re-elected twice in 2014 and 2020. With Merkley officially in this race, the only other potential candidate was Suzanne Bonamici, a U.S. representative from the 1st District, who declined to run and is now running for re-election in the 1st District. Merkley, who despite being in the more likely than not safe Democratic race, already has $4.5 million or so cash on hand as of March 31st, so he is certainly all set up for a very strong re-election money standpoint. On the Republican side, Tim Skelton, a scoutmaster and security worker, has filed paperwork to run against Merkley, but you're not going to see any very well-known Republicans be jumping into this race. Inside elections, Cook Political Report, Sablo Crystal Ball, and Race to the White House all have this race listed as safe for Jeff Merkley, and again, it really does not act as too much of a surprise. In 2020, Merkley won by 17.6% over his Republican opponent Perkins, 56.9 to 39.3. Again, this is a very big win, Merkley getting 1,321,000 votes to Perkins' 912,000 votes. So a safe Democratic win in 2020. Merkley was also up for re-election in 2014, which you may remember as the very strong Republican midterm year, where Republicans did very well in places like in Colorado, flipped several Senate seats like in Iowa being one, almost flipped the Senate seat with Scott Brown, Jeanne Shaheen in New Hampshire, and nearly flipped Mark Warner's Senate seat in Virginia. Oregon was still a 19-point win for Merkley in this Senate race. A lot, again, third-party votes split here, but Merkley won by a safe Democratic margin. And then back in 2008, Merkley defeated the Republican Senator Smith in a very close election, 48.9% to 45.55%. It is kind of interesting, a Republican senator in the state of Oregon in the same election in 2008 as President Obama when he won Oregon by a very large margin. It is interesting to see such a close race there, but again, that seems like a long time ago now. That's not going to have any ramifications on Oregon in 2026. The other Senate race in 2022, the Democratic Senator Wyden, who ran against that same Republican nominee, Perkins, won by 14.9%, with again enough vote splitting just to barely get under that 15% margin of victory. At the presidential level in 2024, Kamala Harris won the state of Oregon by 14.3%. Again, just a hair under that 15% margin of victory. And even though RFK Jr. Did throw support behind President Trump, he was still on the ballot in the state of Oregon, getting 1.5%. Had he not been on the ballot, Kamala Harris probably would have broken that 15% margin. So it was barely likely Democratic in 2024. Joe Biden won it by 16 points, safe Democratic in 2020. And then 2016, with a lot of third-party vote, Hillary Clinton only won it by 11 points, with Gary Johnson getting 4.7%, Jill Stein 2.5%. 2012, Barack Obama won it by 12.1% against Mitt Romney. And then the last time, 2008, Obama won it by 16.3%, again, on the same ballot as that very close Senate race. At the governor level, just to show you, it's actually been a little bit more competitive. In 2022, it was only a 3.4% win for the Democrat Tina Kotek against the Republican Christine Drazan. But again, third-party candidate here, Johnson, getting 8.62% of the vote. She got a lot of third-party vote there, which made the race much more competitive than it probably otherwise would have been. Back in 2018, the Democratic Governor Brown won re-election by 6.4%. 2014, this was also more of a close race. The Democrat won by 5.8%. So the governor level, Oregon's actually been a likely Democratic state, but a very competitive state in terms of the governor level in Oregon, whereas at the Senate and presidential level, it's been very safe Democratic. So the good news for Merkley is it's a Senate race, not a governor's race. He likely won't have too much of an issue. It's also worth noting that 2026 is likely going to be an election similar to 2018, which was a strong Democratic year, really for governor, Senate, and for House, and the Democrats won here pretty reliably in 2018. Lastly, just looking at the House map for Oregon in 2024, most of the seats here are all Democratic won, including the very close Oregon 5 here. This was a Democratic win. 2022, Oregon 5 was a Republican win, but again, going to be probably blue in 2026, and this is what the map looked like in 2020. So Oregon, really not too much of anything to worry about for Jeff Merkley going into 2026. As for my own prediction in this race, unsurprisingly, a recent video I was going over some scenarios, but I have the Senate map right now, probably being something like 42 or 45 for the Democrats, 52 for the Republicans. But really, you could argue that Republicans are probably going to start out with something like this, and then Oregon is going to be a safe Democratic win without too much of a worry for Jeff Merkley in this race. There's not going to be too much to really watch for on that one. And again, Jeff Merkley, Oregon, safe Democratic state, has been for president and Senate for a very long time now. And in 2026 is supposed to be a more Democratic-friendly election environment. This is not going to be a state that's going to be even remotely close to being competitive. So Republicans probably aren't going to try and contest this race all this much. And even if they did, it would essentially just be setting money on fire, as they don't have a chance of defeating Jeff Merkley in this race. This gives the Democrats an extra safe Democratic state as well, as they are targeting some very competitive Republican races as well, like in Iowa, Ohio, Texas, and North Carolina, and Maine, and potentially even Nebraska with Dan Osborne. So I hope you enjoyed this video. Make sure to like and subscribe if you did. Leave a comment below, tell me your thoughts, and any questions you may have, please leave them all below. I'll do my best to answer any of those. Also, make sure to hit like and subscribe, as I post multiple videos every single day that you're not going to want to miss. Thank you so much for watching. Hope to see you in a future video.